All right, thank you for joining us here today, everyone, for our presentation on the Loop Leader Plus, our new loop-powered large display and control unit. I think you're going to like what you see. Before we get into the actual meat of the presentation, there's a few things that I always like to cover because they are just common questions that get asked throughout the course of these webinars. The most common question I get is today's presentation being recorded? Can I get a video of it to share? Or perhaps a different spin on that, can I get the slides? And the answer is yes, you will absolutely get the slides from today's presentation as well as a recording of it. That will go out in a follow-up email, which will probably happen early to mid next week. I'd say you probably see it Tuesday. The other thing you've likely already noticed, as some of you have been here now for a couple of minutes, but others of you are just joining in, is that everyone here is in listen-only mode. And you are in listen-only mode because there's just too many people on the call for us to have everybody talking. There'd be too many dogs barking, doors slamming, traffic going by, for us to be able to hear anything that's going on. I would welcome your questions, however. So if you have a question, please use the chat functions, use the question and answer functions. You're going to find that in your Zoom toolbar. Usually that appears down the bottom of the screen. And if you send me that, I'll be happy to answer it live on the call, discuss it at the end. If we have to, I can always, of course, do a follow-up afterwards if the answer just gets too complicated based on the questions. Finally, personal favor to me here, at the end of this presentation, some of you may see a survey. If you do get that, please take 2 minutes or less to fill that out. It's just a couple of questions, but it helps me know how we're doing, what you might like to see, and what we can do in the future to deliver the kind of content you're looking for. That all out of the way. For now, of course, what you are most interested in is hearing about our Loop Leader Plus. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the meat of the presentation, including introducing myself, so that you can see the screen as clearly as possible. I'm going to turn my video off, and I'll pop back on a little later. I want to look at a live Loop Leader Plus, and that's a tease of the Loop Leader Plus that we're going to be sharing a little later. And as I said, with that, let's jump on into the presentation. So the Loop Leader Plus is Precision Digital's largest ever display. We've had back in the day, we had some large display meters. We replaced that with the PD2 Helios. And now we've got an additional large display unit, a loop powered one called our Loop Leader Plus. This is the largest display that we've ever made. The package is the same as that of the Helios, but those primary digits on that top line are the largest in anything we've ever produced. And we'll take a good close look at that in a minute. To introduce myself, my name is Joe Ryan. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Precision Digital. I've been in the process industry now for over 20 years. I've done everything from product design, I've marketed them, I've done application support, I've been out in the field. And of course, now I support them, I sell them, and I support our team here selling and marketing these products. It makes me a pretty good person to answer the questions you've got on these. I certainly understand the technical side as well as the application side. If you intend to attend this webinar for 5 minutes and then leave, this is the takeaways you ought to have. My hope is by the end of this presentation, you will understand everything here. So to go over it real quick, this product, our Loop Leader Plus, applies to a wide range of industrial applications. Everyone's always wondering, especially if there are distributors amongst you, what is it that I go in and I apply this to? What's the application for this product? Well, the answer is there's tons of them. Any kind of process display, level, feet and inches displays, sure, absolutely. You want a big, nice display on there. But maybe you're doing batch control. Maybe you're doing pump control, and that big display would be helpful. Well, as you'll see, it's great for those control applications as well. The main reason you look at the Loop Leader Plus is that huge display, that 2.8-inch, 5-digit top display. That's that one right here. This happens to be the feet and inches one, but we'll see all those different displays in a moment. That 1.5-inch bottom display, by the way, isn't too small either. That's certainly very visible as well. In addition to those, you've also got a bar graph that appears on the right side. And depending on your model, you may even have a percentage that changes up the top there as well. That's going to depend on what display you get. But you've got that 20-segment bar graph. So if your operators don't know, well, But is 16 feet, is that a lot for this application? How tall is my tank? Who knows? Well, you're going to have that information over on the right in the bar graph. You see there's the feet and inches display model. I cannot stress enough that is really helpful for operators when you're dealing with tanks and often sumps as well. Anything that is specified in feet and inches, give them that information in feet and inches. That may be more valuable to them. In fact, you can also give them that display in a volume, which is what we're showing on the bottom here, but that's another story for later. Versatile configurations means that we not only do display models, but we've got control capabilities you can get as well with relays and analog outputs. And forgive me. For those of you who are not that familiar with loop-powered products in general, I will tell you getting relays and analog outputs on a loop-powered product is rare, and it's incredibly helpful. So if you want alarms, you want control outs, you can get that on this loop-powered product. And of course, these are programmable, like all of the kinds of alarm and control features that you expect to see from Precision Digital. Our relays are configurable. We've got remote contacts for control stations if you want to interact with this device, but it's too high up or far away to do so. We have open collector outputs that come standard. In case you want to send a signal back to a PLC, you don't need to run an amp through it. You just want to send a control signal back out. Great, you get standard open collectors. And the red flashing backlight, which really makes this stand out when you've got alarm conditions. We sell light and horns you can mount to the top of these. We'll even drill the holes for you. But maybe you just want that whole backlight to turn red. And we'll take a look at that more in a bit as well. And one of the highlights of the line, of course, is that there are intrinsically safe versions of these products. So you can get this with ATEX and IECEX approvals for intrinsic safety in hazardous areas. Hopefully you don't all bail out, but if you do, that is the takeaway from today's presentation. If you know that about this product, I think the majority of you here are going to find reasons why you want to use it. So taking a step back from the product for a minute, let's just talk about what we mean when we say loop-powered product and why that matters. So that's the most basic decision somebody's got to make when you're talking about displays, is how am I going to power? Do I want to power it off a high voltage or low voltage, AC or DC? Or in this case, do I want loop power? And my recommendation to people, of course, is that if you have power, use it. Why not, right? If you have 120 volts somewhere, you have 44 volt DC somewhere, great, fine, use it. Get a powered display that's line powered. However, if you are putting this into an existing application somewhere, maybe you want this display located someplace that doesn't have line power already run to it. For example, maybe I want to mount this on the side of a tank, and I don't have power running to my tank. I just have the two wires running from the control room to the display, or I'm sorry, from the control room to the transmitter. Well, great. I can put this anywhere along that 4 to 20 loop. Maybe I want to put this at a truck loading and unloading station, and there's no power out there. It's just mechanical valves and hookups. Well, great. Very easy to run two wires just to get your 4 to 20 there. It's really nice for retrofitting existing applications where you don't have power at the place you now want to see some display, or you want to add some control. And the reason is because in a loop power device, all you have to do is break that 4 to 20 milliamp loop that runs between power supply, the transmitter, and maybe there's a PLC or something like that in here as well. All you got to do is break that loop, add in your meter, and all of the power that the meter needs to light up comes from that 4 to 20 milliamp loop. So if I don't have any relays or anything like that connected up here, I literally just have one wire coming in, one wire coming out, and that's enough to light up that huge display. What it does not power is the backlight. So I will note that if you want the white backlight that turns red on alarms, that comes standard with the product, but it's too big of a backlight for us to power. We do that on some of our panel meters, but in this one, it just takes too much power to light up this big display. So if you want the backlight, you've got to put 24 volts to that backlight. So though it is a loop powered device, you can get that display and control with it. If you want the backlight, it's 24 volts. The last great feature I'll mention from this slide is easy sunlight readability. LCDs are inherently sunlight readable. Much like a gas station display, you're going to be able to read that high contrast display regardless of what the sunlight condition is here. So you could have direct sunlight beaming down on this. All it's going to do is increase the contrast between the background and the digits. And so long as you're not blocked by glare or something like that, no one can do anything about that. Short of putting a sun hood on these, which we also sell, these will be great sunlight readable products. So once again, why choose loop powered meters? Well, or I should say, why choose the Loop Leader Plus loop powered meters? Well, the first one is it's a precision digital product. We've been making these for over 40 years. We know what we're doing. You're going to be happy with the results. We've put all the features in it that you want. We've got solid state relays. We've got open collector outputs, 4 to 20 outs, big digits, high contrast displays, a lot of standard features like the ability to connect up control stations or get signals back to your PLC that you're not going to get off of some low-cost cheap import. And I will also add to that, along with those features you want that are electrical features, you also get a 3-year warranty. You get all of Precision Digital's technical support. We stand behind the high-quality products that we make. So if you need a loop power display, we are a great source for you to get it from. Going down a list of key features. I'm just going to go through this real quick. This is a NEMA 4X IP65 rated enclosure that is wall mounted. That means that it is weatherproof, it's water resistant, it's dust proof. You can put this outdoors, it'll be readable, and it will hold up. Obviously, you're getting it because it's a large display and it has those huge digits. The bar graphs are a nice touch. That red backlight for enhanced alarm indication is incredibly useful. If this is a big panel, and if you have that thing turning red and blinking at you and the digits are blinking too, someone is going to notice that you're in that alarm state. And having that, when you don't necessarily have a hazardous area light and horn somewhere, or you don't want to mount a large siren or a light onto it, having this integrated into the product standard is incredibly useful. You've got that 2 open collector outputs standard for sending digital outputs off to your PLCs, your annunciators, your telemetry units, your auto dialers, etc. But you've also got the ability to have 2 loop-powered solid-state relays, which is great. That is incredibly rare. The fact that you could have an amp of power going through relays on a loop-powered device, I can't state how great that is. And you've got your isolated 4 to 20 milliamp output options as well. I've talked a lot about level and feet and inches. There is a rate totalizer version of this product. So if you're doing flow and you want someone to be able to see that effluent total, and great, no problem at all. Get one of these, use it for your open channel flow, attach it to your 4 to 20 out flow meters. Make sure that number is visible. Spending a lot of money to measure those flows. Get those numbers visible to people. Talking about control stations. It is programmable with free MeterView XL USB programming software. You can do it via the buttons if that's what you want, but I always recommend that people use the free programming software. It just makes life easier. It's ATEX and IECX certified for intrinsic safety. We offer lights and horns and reset buttons that we can even mount these right on there for you. So if you want a light and a horn sticking out the top, or you want a reset button on the front, or both, let us know. Work that out for you. Plastic control stations, if you want to have a box with some buttons down somewhere someone can reach and wire that up in your meter, we offer those as well. And a pipe mount kit. So if you're not mounting this onto some rectangular rail or a wooden board and you want to have a plate up here with a U-bolt so that it can mount onto a pipe, great. It's a low-cost pipe mount kit there for you as well. So let's take a look at what all these buzzwords mean, shall we? So there's 3 display types. You've seen some of these sprinkled through the graphics already. Let's start with the decimal display. What that means is that this top line is just a decimal number. It's a volume, it's a flow rate. It's a number of inches or a number of feet, but not feet and inches. It could really represent any value that you want it to be that isn't feet and inches. And then you've got the bottom display where you can put your tag on it. So in this case, you can tell easily that we're showing 660 gallons. You've got your bar graph there on the right with your percentage attached. That is sort of a nice, sort of basic display for everyday applications. Specifically for level applications, we've got these feet and inches displays. What's nice about the feet and inches display is it'll easily tell you you're looking at 16 feet, 3 and 11/16 inches. And you can change that fraction to be whatever version of that you like. But the idea here is that now someone doesn't have to try to interpret what's 312.2 inches. They can see it. They know, okay, great, I'm looking at 16 feet. And they're going to get their bar graph, and they're going to get their percentage. And if you want them to, now they can also get volume on the bottom. So I've got 4 different ways I'm looking at information on this display. I've got my feet in inches, percentage, so I know if that's a lot or not, the bar graph to let me know if I'm reaching full or empty, and I've got the volume, which may also be useful. Highly recommend that feet and inches display. People love it. Then you've got your flow rate totalizer. And of course, the main feature of the 2 lines here is you get your rate and you get your total on the screen at the same time. You've also got your bar graph, so you can get a sense of what that rate number actually means to people. That makes even less sense to people than telling them 312 inches. You've got, great, 4,662. Is that a lot? Is that a little? We can add units and tags on there, but it still doesn't tell them scale. That's what the bar graph is great. This is readable from up to 75 feet away. To give you a sense of what these digits actually look like, here is our Loop Leader Plus top digit compared with all the other kinds of digits you're going to see out there. Your average display digit on, say, a average quote-unquote large display device is probably about an inch. Your standard panel meter is going to have about a half an inch tall display. So you can see the difference in size here. It is significant. Another nice thing is that we use 14 segment characters for this product. And what does that mean? Well, it means that in each individual digit, there are more segments that you have available to you to spell out words and write out your numbers and such. And while it really doesn't matter too much for numbers, when you're talking about tags and units, it makes a huge difference. You can see the difference between tank on the left. Maybe somebody can figure that out, despite the fact it's got an H and a mix of uppercase and lowercase. And tank on the right, where now my capital T exists. And, oops, sorry, that would be A, sort of the same, but I can write an uppercase N, which would have been impossible on a 7-segment digit. And the K actually looks like a K. The 14 segment characters are a huge readability improvement. We even added commas. So instead of just looking at a huge number like this one, 15 million, and trying to count over how many digits are there to the left of that decimal point, what does that mean I'm looking at? Is it 15 million? Is it 150 million? Is it 1.5? The commas let somebody just easily recognize what number they're looking at, get a sense of how big, how scaled up that number actually is. And that's important. You're measuring these values for a reason. You want people to be able to look at it and get a sense of what's happening. And all of these are designed to make this much easier to read, much faster for you to comprehend. I talked about that red alarm backlight. Really recommend it. It is just an excellent feature. The digits and the backlight, the digits can flash and the backlight can turn red, which really draws your attention. So if you don't have some kind of remote alarm attached to this is just a great way to try to get someone's attention using just your loop powered meter and the DC powered backlight. And though it's hard to see on static images, I wanted to make clear you can have your lines flash here to give you the units. So when we were looking at, for example, the process alarm over here on the left, well, I can display it in 2 different formats. I can show you feet and I can show you gallons. Well, how would you know they're feet and gallons? Well, that display is going to flash back and forth. So you're going to see 49.7, depending on how you have it set up. Let's say 8 seconds goes by, then it's going to flash feet for a few seconds. The bottom display is going to show you the gallons number, then it's going to tell you what it is you're looking at. Also really valuable for when you're showing rate and total. You want to be able to show the rate, show the total, and then show the units associated with that rate and total. You want them to know, hey, my top line is gallons per minute, my bottom line is gallons. And now they can know what it is they're looking at. I mentioned alarm indication. We do offer additional alarm indication options. Note these are not hazardous area approved, so this would only be for the safe area versions of the product. But you can actually run a light and horn even with just the open collector outputs. Those open collector outputs can support 150 milliamps at 24 volts DC, which is plenty to run our lights and horns. And we actually offer a modification package where we put this light up on top of the meter for you, and we attach this silence or reset button down to the bottom so that you can clear that alarm when it goes off. Usually the way that'll be done is someone will use the button to silence the horn, just because it's annoying. And then they'll allow the process getting back into regular operation areas to be what is responsible for clearing the flashing or the solid light. So if you want to make a whole one-stop shop package out of this, we're happy to talk to you about that, get you a quote for the modification. It's a standard product that we offer. I've talked about solid state relays a little bit. Many of you are going to be familiar with relays. In fact, I see we got a couple questions coming in, one of which is, what's the difference between a solid state relay and a regular relay? Well, let me address that for you, Tom. So a solid state relay just means that it's a relay that doesn't have any mechanical motion. Normally a relay's got a coil, and you power up that coil, and it moves a little wiper that makes the contacts happen. And so you turn that coil off, it pulls the, turn the coil on, it pulls the wiper down, you release the coil, it puts the little wiper up, and that's just going to be what makes your reed switch contact. A solid state relay is made with transistors and other passive components. It doesn't have any moving parts, it's just electrical. But essentially it is the same thing, which is it's just a switch that turns on. And these open collector outputs are rated for 250 volts at a 1 amp resistive load. So if you need to turn on an intermediate contactor to run a pump, if you want to drive a larger light and horn, you can certainly do that by using these solid state relays. That is a really great feature for when you just want more outputs. The two open collectors are not enough. But two, you want to put something with some oomph in there. You want to put a mechanical intermediate relay there. Great. You can certainly run those with a 1 amp solid state relay. We talked about pump alternation as or pump control being one of the features of this product at the beginning. And not only is it good because it has those solid state relays to run your intermediate relays, which are controlling your large amp pumps, but we can do pump alternation. And we'll take a quick look at that when we look at the demo I have over here live at the end. But essentially what that does is it will alternate between your main pump and your backup pump every time a pump is called. So you can split that load, share it across multiple pumps, and now your loop power display is also your pump control. The rate totalizer version can be used as a batch controller. Thanks to the fact that we've got those relays and we can actually turn on enough current to turn on solenoids, for example. You can connect this up to one of the control stations we offer, and you can put in presets, and you can use it for single or multi-stage batching. And there's an isolated 4 to 20 milliamp output. Something to note about that, something that's come up in the past, and I'm going to guess by the end of the slide, someone will have asked a question on it anyway. It provides isolation, by which I mean that electrically it's going to isolate your field devices, your level transmitter, power supply that's out there running that loop, from your control room display, whether that's a ProView like it is here, or your PLC, or part of your SCADA system. However, you do need power on this side of the loop, on the control room side of that loop. It's going to need its own isolated power supply. Now here with the ProView provides 24 volt power, so we don't have extra wires needed. Many PLCs will do it, some don't. So one way or another, you can imagine there's another box in here, and you've got to provide an isolated power supply to run that external loop, just like you do on the field side, because it's a loop power device. It's not also going to output 20 volts. That just doesn't work. And you can see that's what we're doing over here on the right. Here's my milliamp output, and we've got a power supply that drives the current through that milliamp output off to your PLC, additional meter, whatever you have there. But it is electrically isolated from the input. So this is a really great way to not just get display, but also get electrical isolation between your field instruments and your control room equipment. The easiest way to program the Loop Leader Plus is with MeterView XL. It's free, it's It's easy to download. You connect right up with a USB cable that ships with the meter, and it lets you do all of your programming in a nice, slick, easy to follow package. I can't recommend this enough, especially if you're going to take advantage of units and tags. You're going to put custom alarm messages in there. You want to just type that into a keyboard. You don't want to be using the 4 buttons for programming. It can be done. It's just a lot easier to use the software. What do these cost? It's nice to get a sense of that. So they begin, the lowest cost versions, at $1,300. That's going to get you your loop powered process meter. And then your prices go up after that till you get to around $1,600 for your feet and inches meter with 2 relays, a 4 to 20 milliamp output, and all the other features on there, or your rate totalizers. Now that is for the safe area versions. There are hazardous area approved models as well. These come with ATEX and ICX in terms of safety. And that's just going to be essentially all the same hardware sets. You're still going to have it with no options, just your open collector outputs and your backlight. Or you can add in those solid state relays and the 4 to 20 milliamp output. And that could bring you up to almost $1,900. Luckily, that not only gets you a huge display and all that control capability, it also gets you a NEMA 4X package. So you don't need a box for these. They just mount directly in the field. They're field mountable right like this in a NEMA 4X package. If you're looking at accessories that might be useful for you, you've got your light and horn modification. We talked about that. Excuse me, had to sneeze. You've got your light and horn modification. We talked about that. Here's your red light. We have other colors as well. There's your reset or your silence push button. We have a stainless steel sun hood. They are sunlight readable, but glare is a problem, especially in places where you've got a lot of open, flat land and horizontal sun. I would recommend in those cases that you do put a sun hood on these. It's not necessary to read it in the sun, but the glare can cause problems. And we've got that pipe mounting kit. Plate that mounts across the top, and then you see that U-bolt that goes through the holes on the plate, which lets you mount it to a 1.5 or 2-inch pipe. So wherever you want to mount this, there's a way to do it, whether it's outdoors, indoors, in the sun, out of the sun, in the dark, on a pipe, on some rail, on a wall. It can go anywhere you need it to go. Other convenient accessories, we've got a 24-volt transmitter's power supply. So if you need a 24-volt supply, if all you've got is 120, and you want a 24-volt DC supply to run your loops, no problem. Got that for you. And if you want to use these for a type of control where the operator is going to be interacting with it, most notably, of course, it's batch control, but you may want other buttons on there for other reasons. We do offer plenty of control stations with pre-labeled buttons on there for you to choose from. And the digital inputs to use those control stations come standard on the Loop Leader Plus. If you want to learn more, grab a picture with your cell phone now, get yourself the QR code. You can go watch our video on the Loop Leader Plus, or get in touch and we'll show you our large display meter demo. And that's actually what I'm going to do right now. We're going to close out today's presentation. Well, we'll close out with a Q&A. But before we get to the Q&A, I've got a brief live demo here I can show you of that. So let me bring my video back, stop my share. And rather than looking at me here at my computer, I'm going to switch you over so that you can see the demo that I've got set up on my desk over here to my right. The first thing I want to do is just point out how large this display actually is. So here I've got one of our Loop Leader 1/8 in panel meters. And if I just put that on top of there to show you what the scope is we're talking here, the digits on the Loop Leader Plus are larger than the entire panel meter's height. So sometimes you throw around people, hey, what does 2 inches mean? Well, who knows? But you show somebody a 6-inch ruler, you show them how it connects up to, how it compares up to one of our panel meters. You can see this is a big unit. And that's why you have that visibility from 75 feet away. This is not something you're going to want to work next to in a control room on your desk. This is something you're going to want to look up and look at every once in a while to see what's going on. We, in this case, have a 3-color light and horn modification done. So we have this horn mounted to the top. This is our demo, so the light and horns are movable. So if you notice, it wiggles a little bit. That's why, because this is our actual travel demo, and we didn't want to leave the demo sort of permanently, or leave the light and horn permanently attached. Pardon me, my gasket slipped off. And then I've got my button down the bottom, which we're using to silence the horn. The way this particular demo is programmed is I've got a number of gallons that I'm looking at in my K tank. And as that gets too high, I start approaching 7,000 gallons, you're going to see that I'm going to reach an alarm state and my yellow light's going to turn on. In this demo, the yellow light represents pump 2, the green light represents pump 1, and any pump turning on means that I'm going to lower my level until I get to about 2,000 gallons. So we're doing some basic pump control. You may recall I mentioned that we can do pump alternation. Well, pump alternation means that as my level once again rises, and I hit 6,000 gallons, and I hit 7,000 gallons, and I call for a pump to turn on. Well, this time, instead of my yellow pump 2 turning on, my green pump 1 is going to turn on. And now, hopefully, that pump 1 being on is going to bring my level down from over 7,000, and it's going to keep pumping down until I get to about 2,000. Of course, there's more to pump control than just turning on one pump at a time. If my level keeps going up, let's say I have a problem with my pump, and when I try to call it in order to drain this tank, I call for pump 2 to turn on, but it can't keep up. Maybe the pump's got a seal blown. Maybe it lost power. Who knows? But for some reason, my level keeps rising. When I get to 8,000 in this version of the demo here, I'm going to call for pump 1 to turn on. Okay, I have a real problem here. Turn on both pumps and see what happens. If my level goes down, great. If it still continues to rise, let's say my in valve is stuck open, something like that I can't keep up with, I'm going to hit 9,000 gallons. I'm going to get my red light, I'm going to get the horn, and then I'm going to silence that horn with my push button. And there's an example of that red backlight with the flashing display. It really grabs your attention. And because it's 24-volt powered, that backlight can be really strong. And it is deep red. This is not a dark office that we're in here. And that red really pops. You can see the difference between the red and the white backlight really strongly. And the flashing LCD is really going to grab attention and bring people over to try to figure out what's going on. And of course, eventually they resolve the problem. My level starts coming down. I clear that alarm state. My pumps stay on until I hit 2,000 gallons. This is just a general example of the pump control that you can do, but it does show you all the different possibilities for how you might use a Loop Leader Plus. Even though it's a loop powered meter, it's got a lot of capabilities packed into it. Or maybe you just want a really big display. Either way, those are great reasons to consider one of these for the next application that you're working on, and you think somebody really ought to know what the values are you're spending all this time and money to measure. If you are interested in one of these demos, perhaps you're one of our distributors, we certainly make them available. Get in touch with me, let me know. The demo comes just like you saw it here with the pump alternation demo pre-programmed, the signal generator we use to generate that 4 to 20 milliamp signal, the light and horn, the push button for silence. We even include a bag to carry it around. So it's a nice little kit to show somebody some options they have available when they want something more than just a panel. With that, we can wrap up. However, I do have a couple of questions for you before we get to a little Q&A. So if you have a moment, let me see here. I want to launch a poll. And we're going to take a quick quiz to see what your takeaways from this product were, how many of you are still engaged, and what you learned here today. So I have just launched the Loop Leader Plus quiz, which covers a really high-level view of the product, which you can answer hopefully based on what we've talked about here today. You should be seeing that as a pop-up for you. If you're not, let me know and I'll try to make sure that gets pushed out to you. And I think we've got some folks looking through, clicking on some answers, which is nice to see. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to answer that. I see answers are coming in, which is nice. Or I see right answers are coming in, which is nice. Thanks for your participation with this, by the way, everybody. I know that we've gone a half an hour and it's hard to keep your attention in that, but I'm hoping that the product has been interesting enough to keep you engaged. There's a lot that this can do. And it means there's always one more thing to talk about. All right, let's see how we did here. Go ahead and share the results. So what powers the PD4 loop leader plus? Well, the 2 wires from the 4 to 20 milliamp loop power it. Directly, nope, definitely not high voltage. Low voltage is necessary for the backlight, but the product, the screen, all the capabilities, reading of the values, that's all loop power. If you want to use the backlight, you must also have available 24-volt DC. I'm hoping that those of you who said 120 or there is no backlight, hopefully you joined in late or missed that, but hopefully I made that point clear. A powerful feature on the PD4 Loop Leader Plus, like our Loop Leader panel meters before it, are, of course, the 2 solid-state relays, but also open collectors, the isolated 4 to 20. All of those are features on the product, which are uncommon in standard 2-wire loop power devices. And which has this area intrinsically safe approvals marks are available. Many of our products that has this area have a wide range of approvals, including UL. The PD4 specifically is ATEX and IECEX intrinsically safe certified. Well, I thank you for doing that, folks. It gives me an idea that I do think people were able to stick with it and learn a thing or two about this new product. I've got a question or two I'll answer from the audience, but just as a reminder, if you see the survey when we wrap up here, please take that. I sure would appreciate the feedback. I just see 2 questions here that are structured in a way I can sort of easily give answers to. The first one is asking about 24 volts to power the loop. I believe, by the way, for that, I think they're talking about the input loop, the main loop that runs this product. And that's, do I need to power the loop with 24 volts? Can I power the loop with 12 volts? Well, that's a great question. And the answer to that is, it depends on the total voltage drop in your loop. If I go back to the very beginning of our presentation, pardon me for the spastic slide changes. Let's see here. So in a loop powered instrument like this, you need to make sure that your power supply drives enough voltage to cover the voltage drop in your products. So your transmitter is going to have some kind of a voltage drop. If you're using a PD4, your meter is going to have a voltage drop on there as well. And these 2 voltage drops, let's call them V transmitter and V meter, those 2 things have to add up to less than what your power supply is able to drive. So if I'm driving it with a 24-volt power supply, well, that's really great because my meter voltage drop is very, very low, especially because the backlight has to be powered separately. That means that in the case of a PD4, I believe you're only talking about a 1.5 volt drop. And so you have plenty of voltage available for even an 18-volt transmitter. However, if you've only got 12 volts powering it, then you've got to make sure your transmitter is going to be, let's say, 10 volts at most, maybe less, maybe 8 volts would be nice to have a little headroom there. Is your transmitter 8 volts? I don't know. But that would be the concern with you running 12 volts for the loop. It is doable. You just have to make sure that you're not running a transmitter with too high a voltage drop or anything else in the loop. If I start adding in additional meters or some kind of a PLC with an input voltage drop there, more instruments I may add along this chain, they're all going to add voltage drop onto that 4 to 20 loop. And I need to make sure I have enough voltage to run it all. So the answer is yes, you can use a 12-volt power supply to run the 4 to 20 milliamp loop. You just have to be very aware of those voltage drops. Another question, and this is from someone who obviously has had experience with 4 to 20 milliamp loop power displays in the past. Does the display dim like some 4 to 20 milliamp backlights do? And so what they're getting at is if you have a loop powered backlight, the power available to drive that display, whether you're talking the red backlight or the white backlight, that power is all coming from the loop. And so when you have 4 milliamps, the backlight tends to be dimmer than when you have 20 milliamps. Well, because you're externally powering the backlight on the PD4, because it requires that 24-volt power supply, you're going to have a steady, bright backlight under all 4 to 20 milliamp input conditions because you're not powering that backlight from that small amount of current going through the loop and the small voltage drop you're going to pull. And so, no, you're not going to get any dimming. If you have a low-level alarm and you're powering that backlight with 24 volts, it's going to show up just as bright red as it would if it was a high 20 milliamp. You're not going to see any change. It's going to be a nice, bright, consistent backlight all the time. It looks like that is all the questions I've got here to answer. So I thank everybody for your attendance. I hope it was valuable. Please share it when you get the email next week with other folks you might like to see. If you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk over any applications or answer any product questions you may have. Thanks, and we'll see you at our next presentation.